Para un político, ¿cuál es el precio de criticar al líder poderoso y vengativo de tu propio partido? ¿Te volverán a votar para un cargo público? ¿Y cuál será el costo personal cuando él te llame desleal, traidor o te llame Rino, republicano solo en nombre?
So I had family that sent a certified letter disowning me. They said I was a member of the devil's army. You know, we had people that would call and threaten to kill my, at the time, 5-month-old child, or say they wish he would die. You think about that. I had my co-pilot from Iraq, Anderson. It's one of the most, intense bonds you can build, who texted me and said he was ashamed to have ever flown with me and served with me.
And as a consequence of speaking out against the former president, I did lose my home and I was forced to flee my home. I did lose my job in the private sector. I had to spend my life savings on lawyers and protection costs. And I ended up on election night 2020 in a safe house under armed guard with a pistol under my pillow and grappling, quite frankly, Michelle, with addiction issues. The pressure was so intense from the threats across the political spectrum, frankly.
Debes tener en cuenta este costo personal para entender la decisión de algunos de quedarse callados y la seriedad de aquellos que finalmente deciden que necesitan hablar.
They built a gallows and chanted about murdering the vice president. They did this because they'd been fed wild falsehoods by the most powerful man on earth. Because he was angry he'd lost an election. Former President Trump's actions preceded the riot for a disgraceful dereliction of duty.
Now we gather due to a selfish man's injured pride and the outrage of supporters who he has deliberately misinformed for the past 2 months and stirred to action this very morning. What happened here today was an insurrection incited by the President of the United States. The truth is that President-elect Biden won the election. President Trump lost. I've had that experience myself. It's no fun. Scores of courts, the president's own attorney general, state election officials, both Republican and Democrat, have reached that unequivocal decision.
But I think it really is just character at the end of the day. And the fact that if you're willing to put yourself above the Constitution, an oath you swear when you take office, in federal office, whether it's president or a member of Congress, you swear an oath to the Constitution. And if you're willing to suborn it to yourself, I think that makes you unfit for office.
Does it?
En la historia de 248 años de nuestra nación, nunca ha habido una persona que sea una mayor amenaza para nuestra república que Donald Trump. Intentó robar las últimas elecciones usando mentiras y violencia para mantenerse en el poder después que los votantes lo rechazaron. Nunca más se le puede confiar en el poder. Como ciudadanos, todos tenemos el deber de poner al país por encima del partidismo, de defender nuestra Constitución. Es por eso que votaré por la vicepresidenta Kamala Harris.
I want the American people to know that I had no right to overturn the election. And then on that day, President Trump asked me to put him over the Constitution. But I chose the Constitution, and I always will. I mean, I really do believe that anyone who puts themselves over the Constitution should never be president of the United States. And anyone who asks someone else to put themselves over the Constitution should never be president of the United States again.
Donald Trump es el primer presidente en mi vida que no intenta unir al pueblo estadounidense. Ni siquiera pretende intentarlo. En cambio, trata de dividirnos. Estamos presenciando las consecuencias de 3 años de este esfuerzo deliberado. Estamos presenciando las consecuencias de 3 años sin liderazgo maduro. Podemos unirnos sin él, aprovechando las fortalezas inherentes a nuestra sociedad civil.
As I wrote then, I said, there are many reasons for this assault on the Capitol, But foremost among them was the president's exhortations, was the president's sustained disinformation, what you covered earlier in the show, denying the results of the election, spreading these unfounded conspiracy theories and claims of widespread corruption. And so I think what we just saw is we saw the absence of leadership, really anti-leadership, and what that can do to our country.
We are unique among the world's militaries. We don't take an oath to a king or a queen or a tyrant or a dictator. And we don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator.
You've made clear you see President Trump as a threat to democracy. Upon his retirement last week, General Mark Milley, an ally of yours during your time in office, appeared to refer to him in his farewell speech as a wannabe dictator. Is that overstating things? A dictatorship?
Well, look, if you go back the week prior, Donald Trump said that Milley, for his behavior, whatever he thought that should be punished, and he talked about execution. Mark Milley served this country honorably for 40-plus years in war and peace, moved, dragged his family around 20-plus times. He deserves our respect and admiration, and not that type of talk. No less coming from the commander-in-chief, the former commander-in-chief. So look, I have a lot of concerns about Donald Trump. I have said that he's a threat to democracy. I think the last year, certainly the last few months of Donald Trump's presidency will look like the first few months of the next one, if that were to occur.
Those answers show why Donald Trump is not fit to be president of the United States.
One thing he repeated that night as well was that he said if he was in office that Putin would not have invaded Ukraine.
Yeah. Trump has this impression that foreign leaders, especially adversaries, hold him in high regard, that he's got a good relationship with Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin, Kim Jong-un. In fact, the exact opposite is true. I have been in those rooms with him when he's met with those leaders. I believe they think he's a laughing fool. And the idea that somehow his presence in office would have deterred Putin is flatly wrong. If anything, if Trump had won a second term and done what I think he intended to do, which is get out of NATO, Putin would have just waited and let him do it. And even the weakening of NATO would have made it a lot easier for the Russians to have prevailed.
He's on his revenge tour for, people who dared to vote for impeachment. And I want to just warn people that once he takes office, if he were to win, he doesn't have to worry about re-election anymore. He will be about revenge. He will probably have some pretty draconian policies that go on.
You write that you were concerned about a young press aide who was getting inappropriate attention and comments from President Trump. Should you have done more to protect her?
I don't know if I could have. There's not an HR department at the White House where you can go and say, hey, the President of the United States is acting inappropriately. So I did the best I could in terms of never letting her be alone with him in the cabin. I tried to keep her off trips as often as I could.
Was it a mistake to work for President Trump?
Yes.
Why'd you do it?
Like I said in the beginning, watching how people reacted to him. And I do believe he gave voice to a lot of people who did feel forgotten. But I think that many of us, myself included, got into that White House and got heady with power and became really, we didn't think about serving the country anymore. It was about surviving in there. And he loved it. He loved the chaos. And it's bad.
And it's also quite typical in this sense, these two individuals, Nora and Carlos, are dragged into this thing. Their lives turned upside down by Trump to pursue, this caper of his. And he leaves in his wake ruined lives like this, the people who went up to Capitol Hill, these individuals, many of the people who served him in government that got sucked into things. And he just leaves all this carnage in his wake.
Do you think Trump has promised that if he gets back into office, he's very blatant about this, about using the Justice Department to go after his political opponents? Do you worry that he would weaponize it if he was back in office?
Absolutely. Trump, as you say, he's very clear about it. I think there's no question that he believes these institutions should be used to go after his enemies.
¿Qué puedo añadir que no se haya dicho ya? Trump es una persona que piensa que aquellos que defienden a su país en uniforme o que son derribados o gravemente heridos en combate o que pasan años siendo torturados como prisioneros de guerra son todos tontos porque no sacan nada de ello. Una persona que no es sincera con respecto a su postura sobre la protección de la vida aún sin nacer, sobre las mujeres, sobre las minorías, sobre los cristianos evangélicos, sobre los judíos, sobre los hombres y mujeres trabajadores. Una persona que no tiene idea de lo que representa América y no sabe de qué se trata América. Una persona que admira a los autócratas y dictadores asesinos. Una persona que no tiene más que desprecio por nuestras instituciones democráticas, nuestra Constitución y el Estado de Derecho. No hay nada más que se pueda decir. Que Dios nos ayude. Al subir este video, la elección está casi aquí y las probabilidades son 50-50 que Trump sea elegido. Si estas voces te han convencido que Trump no debe ser elegido, necesitas votar por Harris. La carrera se reducirá a estos 7 estados clave, así que si conoces a alguien que vive en esos estados, por favor comparte este video con ellos. Y finalmente, dale me gusta y suscríbete a este video para que el algoritmo de YouTube sepa mostrárselo a más personas. Gracias.